Hi, Evie. Evie Day from New York. Shall we talk about your new work? Actually, I don't know the title, so perhaps you can start with that.
Well, it has a very long title, Moss Ball, a meditation on the overview effect.
On the overview effect?
Overview effect. It's
Okay.
a term that was created by a former astronaut who recorded or found the recordings of astronauts when they first landed on the moon, and they look back and they see the Earth. And now all these astronauts were going like cowboys, engineers, we're getting to the moon, so much drama, they get to the moon, they turn around, they see the Earth, and they just melt. They see how delicate it is, how fragile this little blue atmosphere is, and they look at, why do we have war? Like, why was this even a race? Why aren't we all just sharing our resources? These kinds of deep empathy for the world as a whole. And it's interesting to me that that was never discussed then. I just don't think it was in their interest at that time. But it's very beautiful.
So this is an image of the Earth then from the moon?
No, this is an image of a decorative moss sphere from a Renaissance garden in Italy. And when I was there, this is a very early Mannerist garden, 1400s, and very highly manicured with topiary mazes, everything's based in geometry, and at the time, the purpose of that was to use mathematics and geometry to show man's control over nature, the laws of nature. That was part of the pretense. So when we're walking through the garden and I notice these it's a very generic kind of decorative item that they had grown lichen and moss naturally in the kind of similar proportion as we understand the Earth to be, size of continents versus water. So there's this ratio and the shapes look very much like a planet. And as we're walking around, I would see one from afar, and it was a very surreal moment, as though you're seeing the Earth or an image of the Earth in that setting. And it reminded me, because I had read about the overview effect, and so I kind of put those things together and thinking about how these are the only things that are not manicured in these gardens, and they have been left to grow, and they decided to grow reflecting the Earth. And I was just interested in that miracle of nature, or
serendipity of nature, right?
That it's like these moss balls, they're not being groomed, and they are kind of rebelling by saying, no, you can't control the whole thing. So I became somewhat obsessed. I took photographs of many of these. Some are all lichen and barren looking, like an ice age, or some look like different continents of India. But this one, it just resonates like that. I mean, did you think it was the Earth? Because if you look at it, how could it, like the moss, it's like
I know,
it's scale, but it tricks you. I mean, I didn't do anything to it.
Well, I was wondering first if you had, sort of altered it, and, and as soon as you said it was a moss ball, I felt like I thought, of course it's not the Earth, but I did think for a moment it was.
It has and so this is, and they're about this big.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just uncanny to see in the context. So I took all these photographs and I've been trying to contextualize it. Well, how do you get either that effect, or how do I use this in a way that makes sense or points to, there's a message in here somewhere, is what I felt.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I was in Italy for a year at the American Academy of Rome, and I was going through many churches that Baroque and Renaissance, and in particular looking at Bernini and the Ecstasy of St. Teresa. And in that particular piece, aside from that he's carving marble to look like it's floating, she's floating on a cloud, having an ecstasy experience. The rays, again, this is another contrast in the context where the rays look so streamlined, mechanical, within the context of this Baroque scenario that's all very lifelike and curvilinear. And it just struck me as, okay, well, what is this? This is not sun, this is God, this is the word of God, this is the presence of God, and that's why she's being activated into this state that we're seeing. And then thinking about these rays, I started noticing these baroque decorations where you have the rays radiating out, as in the Vatican, St. Peter's throne, a huge Bernini Raggio situation where you have these golden rays reaching out, and it's so dramatic. In the middle is a stained glass with a dove, signaling the Holy Ghost is coming, and all this gold, the whole thing is gold in the middle, and there's cherubs floating, and they're, just writhing in there. But there are these clouds too, and the clouds look like molten lava. It looks like it's coming from the center of the earth and it's going to erupt. So again, there's this, this is a beautiful thing, we're in heaven, this is God, or is it really, it's like terror, it's frightening. So I was interested in the duality that maybe it was not intended to be as grotesque as I'm saying, but there's definitely this shock and awe, and propaganda for luring people.
Well, it's a counter-reformation. It's a church triumphant too, right? And so this is all this kind of imagery that's going on then. How do you connect the Bernini-esque burst with your mass ball?
Right. So here's this planetary form, and really it started with the idea of the rays. So here is a bronze rod that's coming out, and thinking about this is sort of the blast-off point. And either it's, I don't know if it's going there, it's being zapped, or it's going the other way, where I have another little Raji, which looks very much like, well, it's meant to be a sputnik.
Raji?
Well, the raggio is the Italian word for rays,
yeah, okay,
sunlight
yes,
rays.
right,
So
that
I
raggio.
call this my raggio, that's my sputnik, and this is golden ray, and moss ball. So, because also when I was looking at these many Annunciation paintings in the Renaissance and medieval, the medieval ones have a very particular icon that represents the golden ray coming down, the presence of God, and basically the announcement that Miriam, you're going to have the baby, you're going to have Jesus. And it's oddly very much shaped like the Sputnik. And my interest has been about this antenna and like ways of communicating invisible technology like Wi-Fi or radio waves. How do you visualize that? And in a similar way is what in the Catholic Church they were trying to do too. And so you make it's gold, so it's very powerful, and it's ephemeral, and it reflects light a little bit, but it's magic. And thinking about what is today, where would there be a connection with that? And so I was thinking about, the internet, that's actually the most powerful thing we have in culture, is the speed of our communication, and the control of it. And somehow there's a relationship through there. So these are just really a bunch of ideas that...
Are you Catholic?
No.
Okay.
And but when you're in Rome, you're
Catholic.
You're really looking at the imagery,
yeah,
and realizing in the United States how much of just architecture, all kinds of traditions are just brought back through there that aren't even Catholic in the United States, but there's a lot of resonance there. So you're sort of seeing this original source. And all the, the decorative work, that's where the art was, because the church was commissioning the art.
Exactly. But I think, it's sort of anecdotal, but I do feel that there's been some kind of resurgence in religious iconography or thinking for whatever reasons. I mean, it could have been just the obverse side of all our thinking about jihad, but from Islam to Catholicism or other religions. But I don't know, have you noticed that in contemporary art, I mean, recent art, that people seem to be more interested, at least, I'm not perhaps, talking about belief systems, but just examinations of, another way of thinking. Do you think that influenced you or not?
No, I think I was...
Just because you were in Rome and...
I was there, I really was looking at the Ecstasy of St. Teresa, interested in that piece for so many reasons about it being this stop action moment and the way that he's created the architecture for the sculpture, all these kind of formal aspects to it that are issues and ideas that I work with in my work, sort of connected and relating to architecture. Sometimes the architecture is the context, sometimes it determines how I'm hanging something, and also in many pieces I attach to architecture with the kind of tension that's very visible to enhance or exaggerate the importance of something that is in tension, so that you can see it sort of, if architecture is a book, it's sort of, it's all around us, it's like it's the grammar of our structure. So that's where.
But is it architecture in dissolution or in deconstruction? Because I guess I do associate you with, as you talked about, the burst, but the explosion, or taking things kind of apart, and with the kind of energy that's let off as it comes apart, and maybe to come back together again. Any comment?
I don't build things so often. I take things and I manipulate them. Mm-hmm. And so this was a different process altogether, where I'm building, but I'm still building, trying to construct what looks like a stop-action explosion, but I'm taking that idea that already exists and trying to put together materials and ideas in this narrative that are really just about the individual pieces. So there's like 4 components. There's the moss ball, the globe. There is the golden ray. There is then the sputnik at the end of the ray. And then there's the raggio, which is the connector between them. And that's where, when I'm thinking about now, is that like a starburst that's like a positive, or is this a blast off, or is it an explosion that's
like the end of the
yes, I mean, is this
the end of the earth, right?
Something. So it's new work for me, and it's the beginning, I think, of a lot more work with these ideas.